Let's today discuss regarding the functions. So today topic is functions. We will discuss types of functions and all the features are available inside the functions in detail. Okay. So basically functions are used for avoiding the repetitive code, right? And its function are used for the specific purpose, right? So whenever we want to do any specific things and it can be reusable in the future, so that time we'll go for functions, right? So the topic is functions. Now next let's go for the introduction. So what the function is. So as I discussed, like it's a block of code or set of statements which used for us to solve the specific problems, right? And it can be reused as I discussed previously. So we can create the function using keyword function and space with a space function name and open parenthesis and close parenthesis. Inside that we can write all the parameters with comma separated if it is multiple parameters, right? And then curly bracket, and whatever we have to write the statement, all the statement will be included inside the curly bracket. So this is the syntax of the functions to declare. Okay, so we can declare the function using this syntax. So next we'll move on to what are the naming convention or what are the rule to be defined to create a functions. Like see, we have already discussed regarding the variable. Like when we are creating variable, we need to follow some set of rules. Like the rules was like we need to start always the variable name with letters, not with number. We don't need to provide any spaces in while writing the variable name. So same way in functions to write a functions we have some set of rules. Okay, we have some set of rules. So what happens here, the function's name must be a JavaScript identifier. It means like it should be also a proper precise name. Okay, and function name always starts with the camel case letter. Okay, camel case means starting with a small letter and one word completing after next word will start, that should be starting with capital letter. So you can see here the example get data. Okay, so get is a small letter starting with a small letter, but in between data is a different word, another word, and get is another word. So it's like a verb. Okay, so we can write the function name like this. Okay, this is the second rule we have provided. And we can say like function can accept zero or multiple parameter. Like functions can take the parameter or it cannot take the parameter. As our wish, as our the requirement, we can define a functions, right? So that is the third rule. In case of defining multiple parameter, what we use comma separated, right? If you have like multiple parameter, we can just use the parameter with comma space another parameters and so on, so that we can define in the fourth rules. To call any functions, what we have to write, we have to write the name of the functions, right, as defined here with open parenthesis and close parenthesis, and then we can provide the what are the parameter defined in the function, that as an argument we can provide, right? So there are difference between the parameter and the argument. Let's see, parameter is such a things which is used while declaring a function or creating a function. So creating a function, whatever variable you are defining inside the parenthesis, that is called parameter. And whenever you are trying to call the functions and whatever parameters or whatever the data, actual data you are passing to that functions while calling, that is called as arguments. So these are the things we have to understand. Okay, function, so any function has to return something, right? Because it's a function, so it will return something. If we want define in the return statement, okay, return statement, so that time function will return undefined. Okay, so functions will return undefined. So to show the example of this, we'll just go to VS Code and we'll try to write a functions. So as we discussed the rules, based on the rules we will just create. So basically function is created using keyword function and then writing the function name. So let's suppose I'm just writing get data and it should be start with small letter. It's a camel case, so start with small letter and next word will be starting with the capital letter. So that also we have defined. And third, we have studied like it should have either parameter or not parameter. So it's not mandatory like we have to provide a parameter. Okay, so whatever we write or we provide a data or variable, while creating a function, that time that it's called as a parameter. Okay, parameter. Now here, if you want return, like let's suppose I'm just writing the console.log and I'm just printing hello. So this time what happens, the function is not having any return statement to it. So whenever we call this function get data, okay, get data, so this will just print the console hello. But what this function is returning, so we'll just try to do console dot log and we'll try to print. So what this function is returning, okay, what this function is returning. So once we execute it, we can see first it will print hello and then it will print undefined because the function has no return statement to it. So if there is no return statement to it and we are calling here the function, that time after its execution, so once execution starts, whatever inside the function statement will be there, that will be executed and then it will return back to the same place where it is getting called. So once it returns back to the same place, if we don't define any return statement inside the functions, so entire will be replaced with undefined. Now let's go and try to return something. So I'll just return, let's suppose I'm just returning some data as 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the data which I'm returning from the function. So now if we execute this, we will get the return. Whatever the returned has been there in the return statement inside the function, that data will be returned, or that will be value of that function call. So this much we have studied and we have defined. Okay, fine, everything is okay. Okay, if you have any doubt, you can unmute and you can go for it. Okay, so this much is fine. Okay, so this much we have understood, right? Now regarding the arguments and parameter, already we have defined like whatever things, whatever the parameters will be passed. So the parameter can be passed using comma separated if you have multiple parameters. So you can just pass a comma b, okay, b. So that parameter you can pass, and while calling the function, you can pass just argument 23 comma 45, and here you can just print it a comma b. So whatever we have passed from here, we can able to get it. Okay, so we can able to get it inside the function. Okay, so this is basically altogether about the brief description of the function. Okay, next we move on to the next slides. So next slide says like argument. So what this argument? So argument is basically it's a object, okay, predefined object in the JavaScript. Like what is the use of this argument? First we have to understand. So before that you have to understand regarding the function in JavaScript. Like function can take n number of argument or n number of parameter, right? So here one example I wanted to give, like let's suppose this function get data having only one parameter, right, a, and we are providing two parameter, okay, two parameter. So what happens, it will be okay, it's fine, it won't give any error because JavaScript, in JavaScript, no, calling function, whatever parameter we can, whatever argument we have to pass, we can pass. It's not mandatory like what is the prototype of this function. If this function takes one parameter, we have to provide one parameter. No, that happens in the other programming language. But JavaScript has this. We can say sometimes it's an advantage or sometimes it can disadvantage also, because we are not following the proper prototype. Let's see, here we are defining the prototype as okay, this function needs only one parameter. Here if you pass one parameter, that also fine. If you won't pass the parameter, that is also fine. If you pass the parameter, multiple parameter, that is also okay. Okay, so once we execute, here you can see a is 23 but 45 is ignored, right? This is simply ignored and simply it's a pass to the function. Now let's suppose if I'm passing a comma b, right, a comma b, and I'm just printing here a comma b, that is also fine. But this time I'm not passing the value b, I'm just passing the value a. So basically a will take as a 23, but what b will take. So whenever we want pass any value to the parameter of the functions while providing the argument, while calling the functions, that time that parameter will take undefined as a default value. So once, because here we are printing a comma b, So now if you see after execution, A is 23 but B is undefined. Okay, so that is the one. Now what is the argument playing to exist? That whatever we have seen here, the arguments. Okay, so basically arguments is the object. Okay, object. So what happens, it's array type structure. So what happens if you want to pass variable number of argument to the function, like let's suppose someone asks you like write a function to add a number. So you'll write a function to add a number, but you can define okay a comma b, right? But they told you okay no, I want to add a things not with the two number. I want to, I can pass multiple value and it should add. It should be able to add. So what happens? Now that time you will get confused. Like okay, only two parameters taking. How I can do that operation? If someone passes the three parameters, like let's suppose someone passes the 34, 56, then only two parameter will be used because only two parameter we have passed. So only A and B will be used. Third will be ignored. So to solve this type of scenario, to access basically variable number of argument while calling the functions, we can use arguments. Okay, we can use arguments. So arguments, whatever the arguments you are passing, that it will be defined. Okay, that it will be taken. So I'm just printing here console.log arguments.length. Let's suppose I'm taking. Okay, what is the total number of arguments we have, because this is called like argument, right? This is called argument. Whatever we are passing here, that's the argument, and whatever we are defining here, that is a parameter, right? So it doesn't mean like how, what is the parameter defined to the functions, but what are the arguments are provided while calling that functions. So argument we're providing 3. So here the argument dot length, even though the function having the 2 parameter, argument dot length will always have a 3. Now see, if you see, you can okay get okay, it's a add number, so it should be add number. Okay, so I'm just writing C. Argument is 3 and nothing is returning, that's why it's giving undefined as a value. Okay, so with this what you can do, you can just remove this parameter. You can make function as a variable number of arguments. So now if I want, if someone has asked you okay add a number, how many numbers I'll give, you have to add it. So we can just write it. So just write let sum equals 0, and this argument will print as a array type structure. So we'll just see, if you pass arguments you will get array kind of structure. So now if you see it, it's a argument object kind of structure, right? In the 0 position 23, in 1 position 34, in 2 position 56. Okay, this has a object type. So and then it's an array type. Okay, so what happens, like if I define here argument of 0, it will print the first argument 23. So if you see, it's just printing the 23. So basically we know like it's a array type structure. So now what we can do, we can just using the for loop, let I equal to 0, I less than arguments dot length I plus plus. Already we have discussed why we are starting from 0 and why it is less, right, in the previous classes. So starting from 0 index ending to less than length index. Okay, so now we just do sum equal to sum plus a argument of I. Okay, and then what we do, we just try to return sum. So now with this much code, now what happens, whatever number of arguments you pass, it will accept it and it will add and it will just give us the result. So let's call with simple so that we can able to calculate the things. So see, it's a 2 plus 1 3 3 3 3 plus 3 6. So the return value will be 6. Now one more value I'll pass 4. So 4 plus 3 7 and 3 10. So now it will return as a 10. So see, our function became variable number of arguments we can pass and we can just do the summation. So this type of scenario, our argument objects will be useful. Okay, understood this topic? Any doubt? But if you have to define like a specific one two number, then you cannot use the arguments. You can just define here two argument, two parameter and two parameter, two argument. That's it. Understood? Any doubt here? Okay. So this is basically, so here the same thing is there, right? So here what I have written, inside the function you can access object called arguments that represents the argument function. We can use a square bracket to access the argument, like argument of 0 returns the first argument. Now see here we have defined the same thing, add sum 0 and then sum plus equal to argument of 5 returning, then see first we are passing 2 value 3, it's return 3, then we are passing 4 5 value, the return 15, right? And can use length property to get the total number of argument passed. So it doesn't matter how many number of parameter you have to accept in this function, but always it defines the argument. Argument means whatever the argument we are passing as a parameter while calling that function. So that is basically arguments. Okay. Next we'll move on to hoisting. So see, hoisting we have already seen in our variable, right? So hoisting means pulling the variables on the top of the scope. Like that day I have shown you some images in the browser. Like whenever we try to access the variable before creation, okay, whenever the variable is accessed before creation, that time it will get hoisted with a undefined value. So let's discuss regarding the functions today. So even for functions also we can call before creating. Okay, so what are the types of function we can call before creating and what are the types of function we cannot call before creating? Okay, so that let's discuss regarding it. Okay, so as we say, like there are three types of functions, right? We have discussed in the long back previous classes. One is normal function. Okay, second was function expression. Third was arrow function. Okay, three things we have studied in the previous classes. So in this all three, only number functions are hoisted. Okay, these all are not hoisted. Okay, means we can't call before creation. Okay, we can't call before creation. Means the example is like I'll create a function. It's a normal function, right? So normal function can be created using function keyword and with the function name. So function space, I'll just write get name and I'll just return John, right? I return John. So basically first we create function and we'll try to call, right? So we'll just call get name and that's it. And if we have to print something, we'll just console it because it's returning something, right? So it's returning John, so we have to print it. So basically if you try to access this after creation, it's fine. It is a normal behavior, right? It will just return a John, it's executed and it's return a John. Okay, but function is created first, then it's getting called. Now we just copy this, okay, and we'll paste it on the top. So here in line number 4, the function till now the get name is not got created, but because of hoisting concept, what happens? The normal functions will be pulled out on the top. Okay, by default it is pulled out on the top. So that is the reason we can able to call this function. So if it's a normal behavior, it will define. See, even though the function has created in the next line, but it's still having the same behavior, right? So this is hoisting concept. Okay, but the hoisting we will only use for normal functions. So let's go for function expressions. So function expression, what happens here? In function expression, basically function expression will create, we are passing the function as a parameter, or sorry, function as a value to the variable. So that is function expression we have defined, right? So we have just writing the get name, this is the variable, and just we'll create a we can define a anonymous function. Already we know anonymous what function is because the function which does not have name to it. Okay, so anonymous function. So I'll just return head, right? So this is function expression we have already discussed in the previous classes, right? So now this, when we call this function, okay, when we call this function after creation it's a fine, no issue. After creation it's a fine here. But if this function is getting called before creation, okay, or before declaration details, so this time I'm just clearing the screen and we can see the output. It says cannot access get name before initialization. Okay, so before initialization, so we cannot access it. Okay, so function expression cannot be hoisted. Okay, same way for arrow function, so we just remove this and we'll make it arrow function. Same way in arrow function also we cannot hoist it. See, same error you will get name cannot be initialization. Okay, so this is basically regarding the hoisting concept of the function. So only normal function will be hoisted, other function expression and other function will not be hoisted. Okay, same thing we have defined here. See, show me, we are calling a function which is normal function, so it's hoisting, right? It's a hoisting, it's printing hoisting example. But if we try to access a function expression and we are calling before creation, then it's display a error. Okay, it says like cannot be hoisted. So we can see same we have written like function before declaring it, function is the mechanism where JavaScript engine physically moves the function declaration to the top of the code before executing them, right? That is function hoisting. Okay, any issue, any doubt in here you have function hoisting? Okay, so next we'll move on to anonymous function. So as you already know, anonymous function already have defined the function. When we create a function without a name, that is called anonymous function, right? So for that we can just come up here and we just create a function. So we're just creating a function with no name, so I'll just return, or I'll just write a console.log, I'll just print happy hour. Okay, but this function have no use, right? Because neither we can call this function or we can use this function, right? We cannot do anything to this function. So this is called anonymous because it does not have any name, because without any name how we can call this function. So if you want to execute this functions, so this anonymous function can be assigned to some variable, right? It can be assigned to some variable. So we can define a variable like data, something variable name we can define. Now it is having the complete set of things and now we can execute this function. Now we can call this function basically. Okay, now we can call these functions. So this is called anonymous functions. Okay, functions having no name. Fine. So this is anonymous function. Let's see, we can assign this anonymous function to one variable and then we can call that functions. Okay, so that is anonymous functions. And it's like says anonymous function can't be accessible after its initial creation, because see, we cannot call these functions, okay, after initialization. We need to often assign it to the variable. So we have assigned it to the variable, then we can able to call the function. So that is anonymous functions. Okay, but it has some advantage, we'll see in the next. Okay, now one thing is next is immediate invoke function execution. Means whenever we are trying to call the functions, at the same time it should get executed. Okay, we no need to call that function to execute. Basically what happens, like whenever we try to create a function, until unless you won't call that function, nothing will happen to that, right? It won't get executed. See, whenever we go here and if you create a functions, like I'm just creating a function get data. Okay, I'm just returning it, or I'm just writing console. Okay, I'm just writing hello. Okay, I'm just writing a hello. Now till we won't call this function, there is of no use of writing this function, right? If I execute this Node.js also, nothing will happen because we are not calling this function, right? Wherever it is getting called, that place only it will execute. So this is of no use because we are not calling this, right? So we want such a function which itself executable, means we no need to call to execute it. Okay, just to create that type of functions we can take a help of anonymous functions. So what I do, I just go and create an anonymous function. So let's first create an anonymous functions. So functions, I'll just write it here, and I'll just do console dot log and just write Harry, right? So this is basically error because this is like of no use. So we have to bind it to the parenthesis. Now it will not have any error. This is basically anonymous because we are just covered with one open bracket, close bracket, right? So I'll just execute, nothing will happen, right? Because it's an anonymous function, we are not still calling it. Already you know, anonymous function will not get called, right? So to call this, generally if we call any function, like when we create a function, like let's suppose, because I'm trying to transform the actual like whatever the normal function into immediate executable function. So I'll just write it data, okay, and I'll just console something, okay. So to call this function, what you will do, you will just write the name of the functions basically. So you'll write the name, and then after this what you'll do, while writing the name, it won't get executed, right? Because this is the name of the functions. So to execute it, you have to use parentheses, right? So once, until unless you won't provide this parentheses, the function will not get executed, right? So if you want to see the example, see, we ignore this parenthesis. So if we ignore this parenthesis, what happens? Nothing happens because nothing is there, right? Because we are not printing also. If you try to print also, what happens here? If you try to print, but without calling it, without writing parenthesis, only the function name I'm writing. So if you write function name only, no, without parenthesis, what happens? This entire function will get printed here. So see in the terminal, if you see, so entire function is get printed. Okay, so you cannot see the function in behind, but if you execute same thing in the browser, you can see this function entire. So let's do that in the browser. Okay, so I'm just going to the browser and I will do inspect. I'll go for new, I'll do inspect. It's opening with some dialog box. Maybe some. I don't know why it's not opening the inspect. Something problem is there. I think it inspect. Okay, it opened, right? So just go for console and I'll clear it and I'll just execute the same thing. Cookie will be blocked. Something Day-12 console that you don't understand or have not reviewed yourself. So let's just write it. So I'll just write function data, okay. So I'll just make it zoom for you and I'm just creating a function. I'm returning. Oh my god, it's some hanging issue was there, and that is the reason it's having the problem. So it was the hanging issue. Okay, fine. So I'm just trying to console Harry, closing it, right? So executed. So nothing is returned. Now if I try to call data with normal function call, it will just give you okay. Oh, okay, console we have written here wrong, so we can redefine it. Okay, the spelling of console is mistake here. Okay, again we defined, now again we are calling, see, Harry it printed, right? But now if we do not call with the parenthesis, so if we do not call with the parenthesis, now see, now what happens? Now entire function data is called, see, functions data console.log Harry. So this entire function will get printed here, right? That function is getting printed here. So you can see in the browser, that's why I showed you in the browser instead of terminal, right? So let's go back to here. So see, you can see. So to call, to execute the function. So same thing we'll do for anonymous function also. Okay. So to call this function, first we have wrapped with the open bracket, close bracket. It means like it's a one functions. Now if you want to call, we just use the parenthesis after this. So this parenthesis will make this function call automatically, because see, now we are not calling that anonymous function, just we are writing this function. So what happens, whenever I execute this file index.js, automatically this Harry will get printed, and I'm not calling this functions, right? So now see, once I execute this, automatically Harry is printed. So what is the advantage of these functions? Why we are studying these? Now see, whenever you go to Flipkart or Amazon or any kind of e-commerce website, I'm just giving the example of e-commerce. So you go to home page, but without login itself, on the home page, if you click, you can see list of products available, list of seller available, list of category available. So it's like whenever page reload will happen, whenever the page will get load, at the same time, so many APIs will get called, so many data will come, like list of product, list of seller, list of category. So all those will automatically get loads. Okay, so that will be inside this function. This type of functions will be created, because whenever the JavaScript will loads, that time itself something has to happen. So that time we use immediate invoke functions. Okay, so if you want to pass the parameter, you can pass here the parameter, sorry, argument. So see, argument also you can pass here, parameter also we can take here. Like let's suppose I'm passing Harry here, okay, in a quotes, because you have to pass the parameter. And then if we take a name, right, you can just do the console dot log, and you can just write a name, right? So even though it will print a Harry. Okay, so this is like auto executable. It automatically executes when we execute the JavaScript functions. Okay, so this is all about immediate invoke functions. Okay, so that is immediate invoke functions. Okay, next we'll move on to next functions, that is arrow functions. So already we have understood like what the arrow functions is. It's like a syntax, like shorthand syntax of the function expression, like removing the function and adding the arrow to it. That is anonymous arrow functions. Okay, fine. So this is arrow functions basically. So more detail regarding the arrow function, what is the difference between arrow functions and function expressions, so that we will see in the upcoming object class. Okay, so whenever we go and study detail on the object, that time I'll again come back to this function expressions and arrow functions, and that time we will discuss more in the detail, okay, regarding this. Okay, so as of now, just to understand, it's a shorthand syntax for writing the functions, okay, and more easy way to write a functions. Okay, next, so next we can see here, so as we have discussed, right, so if you want pass any value to the functions while calling it, let's see, this function hi is having one parameter called message, right? And if you want pass any parameter, what happens, it will just print the defined console.log. What it will print, it will just print here undefined. Basically this should be here, this undefined, but here I have mentioned, okay, it's fine, no problem. But basically, as we already seen the example, when we want to pass any argument to these functions while calling, and if it needs any parameter, that time what happens, here it will print the undefined. Because of that reason, what we have to do, you have to pass a default value to the parameter. Now what is the use and what is the relation between this? Okay, so let's go and check here. Okay, so I'll just create a function and add number will go. Okay, add number, fine. So I'm just defining a parameter a and b. Okay, I'm just writing a return, or I'm just creating a one variable called result, and I'm writing a plus b, right? And I'm just consoling dot log result. Okay, result. Now I'm calling add number. Okay, this time what I'll do, I'll just pass the number 3, 4. So if you pass 3, 4, what happens here, it will go a as a 3, b as a 4, a plus b as a 3 plus 4, 7, and result will be printed 7. So that's a common behavior, right? So once I execute this, we can get 7. But we have not defined any default value to this, right? But as you know, JavaScript, we can ignore the argument. We can call by 2 argument or 1 argument or without argument. So that time already we know A will take as a 3, but B will take as a undefined, right? So if B will take as a undefined and it's going to do some operation here, so result will not be as a 3, because see, now what we are expecting? We are expecting the results to should be 3, because B should be treated as 0, right? But here B will not be treated as 0, B will be treated as undefined. So because of that, the result will be unexpected. We are expecting the result as 3 because A is 3, B is 0. 3 plus 0 is 3 plus 0 is 3. Basically it should be like this, but we are not defining like that. We are just ignoring it B. So in this situation what happens? It will not give you the proper, it will give like NaN. It's like not a number because the value of B is undefined. So anything added to the undefined will create not a number. So this time our program ignore this, because you might write this, but if some other colleagues or some other person who don't have idea of this parameter, what is the total parameter of the function, and directly they will miss this, they'll miss the parameter arguments, they'll write 4 5 arguments instead of 1 2 argument, because JavaScript is a flexible, it will allow how many arguments we can pass, it's easy for us to pass. Okay, so that time we'll face difficulties, our function will be breaking, our function will behave unexpected, or behavior it will define. So to ignore that, what we have to fix it here, we have to provide the default value to both the variable. So default value, so basically we are expecting B should be 0, right? If you want pass anything, then B should be 0. If you pass anything, then B should be that value whatever you are passing. So to define the default value, we can just write with equal symbol, just define the default value. A equal to 0 and B equal to 0 to the function parameter, because the topic itself is called as default parameter. Not here you have to pass, this is the argument. While creating functions, you are just making the parameter as default 0. Now in this case what happens? You are initialize the variable value parameter value to 0. So once if people passes, if we are calling the function and passing the value, actual value, that time it takes the actual value, and if you are passing, if you are forgot to pass any value, that time it will take 0. So that time what happens? Our expected output will be the same. So in this scenario now, if we try to execute this, you can see it is coming as 3 because B is not passed. That means B is taking as a 0, right? But in case if we pass the B value, then no problem, it's fine, it will take that value only, it will not take 0. Okay, so default parameter is very important when you are creating a functions, and some of the parameter is very important for you. Okay, some of the parameter is very important. What is the importance means? Like let's suppose I'm passing the 3 parameters C, but C does not have any operation or role on the add. C is basically used for just printing C. Basically it's just for printing. So what happens in this functions? Basically 2 parameter are very important, right? A and B, because this 2 parameter is required for some operations, like it's a plus operations. But C is not required for anything. C is just getting printed. It's not involved in any kind of operations or any kind of calculations. So in that scenario, what you can do? You can just provide A as a 0 default parameter, B as a 0 default parameter. But if you want pass C as a default parameter, it's fine. But we need to provide, means if it's good if you provide the default parameter. But if you miss also, that time it will not have any issue. So see, this time passing 34, nothing will be happening because A and B value I have just written, right? So it's ignored, right? It's ignored. So whenever any parameter is there in the function which is like really required type, like without that our function behavior will get changed, that time we have to provide that parameter as default value using assignment operator, that is equals with some initial value. So whatever initial value you will provide, it will take that initial value if you want pass the value. Okay, so that is called default parameter. Now see functions, so how we can define? So parameter equal symbol default 1, parameters equal symbol default 2. Now see, here we have the function. So say message as hi. So default parameter I am passing as a hi. Now in the first statement you can see we are not passing anything. So by default it will print hi because we have not passed any parameters. So if we pass anything, it will print this, the value. Again, one more time we are calling. So we are calling with undefined. Undefined itself is a negative value, right? It's a like not a proper value. It's not an actual value. So that time it will take the same default value as a hi. Next time, third time we are calling hello. So third time when we are calling hello, it's an actual value basically. It's a truth value, and these are the false value. Already we have defined, we have discussed what is the truth value and what is the false value. So undefined is a false value, empty string is a false value, right? Null is a false value. So all those are false value. But string with having some data is a truth value, right? Or if you pass 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, letters, all those things are the truth value. So when you are passing the truth value hello, so that time what it will take, it will not take the hi because it has got the actual value, so it will print as a hello. Okay, so default parameter is very important topic. Okay, and it is most importantly asked in the interview. Okay, so any doubt on this default parameter, why it is used, where it is used, what advantage of this default parameter? No issue, right, for you? Okay, okay. Let's move on to next topic. So it's the last topic, I think. So till now we have seen in the functions only returning the one value, right? So whenever we create any functions, we are returning the one value. We cannot return the multiple value, right? So to display that, see here, once I'm trying to return here, I'll just return it. So we cannot write return statement as let's suppose result comma c. We cannot return two value. Okay, we cannot return two value from the what is that return. So I'll just try to console dot log. Let's see what is happening. See, it's just printing the 34. 34 is nothing but it's a result, right? 34 is nothing but it's a result. No, it's giving unexpected behavior. Let's see. When we call add number with let's suppose I'm just calling with some proper value 336. Basically 3 plus 3 it should be 6, and 6 should be stored in the result. So result should be 6, and C is 34. Basically we are passing. So what is happening? It's just taking the last input. Okay, just taking the last one. So if I define here, let's suppose A I'm writing, so now it will print as a 3. So it print as a 3 means basically it will just take the return the one argument or one data at a time. Any functions will return only one data at a time. So to resolve this, if you want to return multiple data at a time, okay, multiple data, so what we can do, either we can use an array or we can use a object. So how to define an array? So instead of writing return as this way, we can just close it with the square bracket. Okay, close it with the square bracket. So this time what happens? All the three will return. Now see, if you execute this, see, 6 is nothing but it's a result, C is nothing but 34, and A is nothing but 3. So it's returned all the three data. So by this way we can return multiple data from the functions. So either like this way or by object way. So object way, what we can do, we can just create an object instead of array. Okay, and we can just return. So see, it's result colon 6, C colon 34, A colon 3. So we can return this many multiple parameter, multiple data, right, from the functions. So we can do like this. And why I have not written here result equal to is to result, that we'll discuss in our object classes. Because if the key and variable value are the same, then no need to write result equal is to result. Okay, automatically it will take the same name as a key and the variable value for this. So same name as a key and variable value for this. 6. So that's why we no need to write key pair, key value pair. Okay, so that we'll discuss in the object classes. Okay, so basically these are the complete details regarding the functions. Okay, in further classes we can see so many things regarding the functions. Okay, so basically this much as a fresher you should understand or you should know. So main things is returning multiple value. Second is default parameter you should know. And third is auto executable, that is IIFE. This question they will ask you, what is IIFE? Okay, or what is immediate invoke function execution? That question they'll ask you. What is anonymous function? They might ask you. What is arrow functions? How the arrow function syntax is? So that might they ask you. What is hoisting concept? How the hoisting happens in the functions? So that question they might ask you. Okay, you can define like, yeah, normal function will be hoisted, a function expression or a function cannot be hoisted. So all those things they will ask you. They can ask you this also, argument, what are the argument object inside the JavaScript, so that you can define, like if you want to take variable number of argument, right? So these are the things, right? So these are total regarding the functions we have discussed. Okay, thank you. So next class we'll discuss some further topics.